Breakfast. Top talk of the morning.
The time is 7:17. You're in Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms. Yesterday, we started a conversation around the National Lottery. And overnight, of course, a decision has been made by the Minister of DTI, Park Stau, as to who will have that contract in the foreseeable future. But does that solve the problem, the underlying problems that have been uncovered there in the National Lottery? We speak about that this morning to Tebogo Sitato, President of the United Civil Society in Action. Tebogo, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Give us a bit of a sense of whether you think that the problems at the National Lottery are now solved, or if that history is still going to burden that entity.
Good morning. Thank you, Tessa. And my apologies for yesterday. My phone was acting up that you couldn't find me, but thank you. And good morning to our listeners.
Yeah.
The horse has bolted, and the problems aren't over yet. And the United Civil Society in Action has been added since the administration of Patel, who actually failed dismally, to say the least, in steering the ship to the right direction. He installed an illegal board. We've been saying it. The board is still illegal. And the current commissioner, they're still illegal. And it's quite pathetic, actually, to say the least, to have seen and watched the National Lottery Commission board with the chairperson, Pichana, as well as the current commissioner and the minister and his team defend lies and corruption and malfeasance at the National Lottery Commission. We want to be categorical, though, that we see our fight has never been against any bidder of the license. But because of the license does affect what happens to the beneficiaries, which is civil society in general, communities, and vulnerable communities out there who actually own the money that is being given to them for public good. Is the money that comes from communities. And I think people think that when civil society speaks about this thing, it's like we're coming with a begging bowl. No, it's our money. It's black people in their majority, poor and marginalized, who play the lottery on a daily basis with the little that they have. And then that money is supposed to come back. But what happens with the current board, which is illegal, and the previous interim board, is that they have wasted so much money. They have not distributed the funds the way they ought to have done. They've taken 300 million taken to treasury. They're still trying to justify that, which is illegal. And from the minister and his team to be defending them to this day, it's unthinkable.
So, Tebogo, you were one of the people who were whistleblowing about particularly the interim board before this new board was installed. What for you is the main challenge when it comes to the National Lottery? What are the instances that you can point us to that you think are really the pain points that show that this entity is not at a good footing? You've mentioned some of them in passing. You were talking about 300 million, for example, that's gone back to Treasury. But what are the instances here that you think show that this entity is not where it should be?
The blowing of money that's supposed to be going for public good on the RFP itself, the budget moving from something around 10 million for the RFP to over 20 million. The renovation of the South African Bureau of Standards offices using the National Lottery's monies, the implementation of the so-called modernization system that is called Tutuga. There's nothing tugging about that system. It has failed organizations, particularly in rural areas and in townships, and that are even struggling. The closing date is tomorrow, Tessa. We've made the call, written to the board, written the very same, as illegal as they are. We try to engage, but the arrogance is out of this world. They've never done anything. Most organizations have been complaining. If you go to Facebook page of the NLC, you'll see how many organizations are frustrated that they cannot deal with this application. We are not against technology, Tessa. What we are saying is that we should have the NLC leadership should have migrated slowly into the new system and allowed for manual applications as well, so that you don't shout out people that you are trying to solve. You can't fight corruption when you are corrupt yourself. But also, before I forget, I want to the United Civil Society in Action. We want to congratulate Sizekhaya for winning. We were never against any bidder. Any bidder would have been happy, except for the ACI. We've made it very clear.
So, what is the issue with the ACI?
Yes, we had issues with the ACI. Do you know why? Because we knew that Patel was actually doing everything in his power to ensure that ACI wins. And we are glad that they didn't win. And we are glad that it's black people that have won. And let me address the political parties. This thing, we've been at it for the longest time. They've been quiet. So to complain about Sizekhaya, that's not the issue. The issue here is the illegal board. The issue here is the corruption and malfeasance, and the issue is making the National Lotteries Commission a political football. If people want to fight, their fight with the previous board and administration, let them do so, but not at the expense of beneficiaries.
No, and I appreciate that the operator here has now been changed, and so we're now seeing, is that going to change things? But what you're pointing to is that there's not necessarily just an operator issue here, there's a governance issue. Tebogo, does the change of board that happened in the last 12 months not give you any comfort?
Absolutely not. How can we be at comfort when we have been writing to Patel and his tenure that what he's doing to install an illegal board is not going to work? The only person that was interviewed in that board, starting with the interim board, was the current chairperson himself. And mind you, he was not even scored. People know Terry Zilani. Terry Zilani had applied for the job to be the board chair. He scored the highest. We spoke to we've been in conversation. We've got records of who scored what. And the current board chair he came fourth after Terry Zilani, but Terry was sidelined with the other candidates. So, and the current board is the issue that where all the problems emanate. It's got nothing to do with the operator. The operator issue now is going to affect the country and civil society communities when the court case today, if it doesn't go the way of the NLC. Remember, the court case is about the temporary license. Remember, there's also a risk of more litigations coming. Ituba has also to litigate.
It's become clear to me, Tebogo, that this conversation is far from done and that we need to get to the bottom of whether there's a management crisis here, whether there's a governance crisis with the board here, or whether the problem has been the operator all the time. I think there are three different possibilities here, or some conflated possibilities here. But I also suspect that this conversation is far from done. And I think that just for the sake of the viewers and the listeners in general, this is a really important conversation because there are billions of rands at stake, not only in the contract amount, but also in the number of NGOs and community-based organizations, particularly, that depend on the lottery as a source of funding the kind of community work that they do. So thank you so much, Tebogo, for just helping us understand that there are still a lot of issues to be solved for in this issue. This is Tebogo Sitato, the president of the United Civil Society in Action Group.